Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Hill, and I will be presenting my kind of reflection over my IDL 800 class at Franklin University for the winter semester of 2018, or fall semester, I'm sorry. And this is kind of a combination of all of the research and studying that I have done over this last semester in this class, which is actually quite interesting. So, again, my name is Melissa J. Hill. I am in the doctoral business administration program. I do have a master's degree in business psychology, which you will see me kind of reference here and there. I do have strong interest in retail management and leadership, and this is where I'm utilizing a lot of this information because I do see several similarities between what I'm learning in instructional design, but also in our leadership development and my experience as well. You'll see will reference to. So the overview of um, kind of what I was just going to be discussing is that global markets are obviously constantly and rapidly changing. And this is forcing organizations to consider new technology and techniques to deliver training programs to their employees. And the workforce development is becoming part of an organizational strategy. We have seen this really begin to increase probably in like the last 20 years. Organizations are really beginning to understand how important their development program is to their overall strategy. And so they're involving more IDL and human resources into that strategy. And there's an increase in studies of corporate training because of this. And nearly 50% of businesses are looking to change their strategies. And their largest concern is the user experience. They want to make sure that their employees are able to use the system easily, that it's effective as well. The problem is that while the information that employees need to learn hasn't really changed, how they learn and retain the information has. We have learned a lot more of how they learn the different styles and techniques, but also how they retain information. And more organizations are utilizing e-learning because of this cost effective and it's easier to reach more students, especially globally, as we have many organizations in the retail business that have stores all across the US and even into different countries. They need to be able to access all their employees, and their employees need to access this program as well too. However, this has led to a question of mine of, is it more beneficial over traditional in-person learning in terms of retention and practice? But more importantly, as part of my dissertation, I'm really beginning to look at, could a combination of e-learning and traditional in-person learning be more beneficial? And what systems organizations and employees like best is the e-learning system. The e-learning system has the greatest impact globally, as I said earlier. The program could be accessed by employees regardless of their location and even time zone, as many organizations may even have stores or hubs in Japan. There's obviously a very large time zone difference between the two. So having a program online that can be accessed at any time really gives them the power to take over their own training. And e-learning is also the most cost-effective and time efficient as well too. Obviously, it's online. They don't have to pay for teachers. They don't have to rent rooms. A student can work on it when they feel like they want to, whether that's at work or at home. So for those reasons, that's why a lot of these organizations like that. And because it is flexible, employees like it because they can do a little bit here and there. It's not an hour, 3, 4, or 5 in a classroom where they're bored or anything. And studies do suggest that it increases efficient knowledge development in their position and with the organization. It improves their work performance, and it can even increase job satisfaction as their goals become clear, their position, they know a little more information about it. It may even give them information of how the organization works and how they can relate to their coworkers. How does this impact training systems? I'm a little bit more of a critic of learning styles. Although it looks very good on the surface, I want to know some of the differences of why it may not work so that we do address that and we can get that return on investment. And one of the biggest things that I do have with some of these learning styles is that different subjects may yield different learning experience or preferences. Me personally, when I was in college, the business and English classes I took online, I didn't really need to sit in class, and I aced all of those classes. However, when it came to science and math, I really needed to be with other students and a teacher because I did struggle through it, and that gave me the flexibility and the ability to ask all the questions and get the information I needed. Had I taken those online, I probably more or less would have failed, but I did get B's and a couple of A's by actually sitting in those classes. So different subjects may yield different learning preferences, and I think that's really important for organizations to understand. Cultural upbringing may also have an impact on learning. And in a study that I did read, really pointing out the difference between Eastern and Western cultures and how they do learn. Eastern cultures actually benefit less from discussion, while Western cultures benefit through it. And that's kind of a big thing, particularly when you're looking at a global organization. So there again, that's a little bit more of using critic as a learning style. Being a critic of learning styles, I'm sorry, because that is something that may be addressed. If the organization does have a hub and so forth in Japan, well, perhaps they need to tailor the program a little bit different. Something else that really interested me in my study was discovering Milan Klemet's study, which was learning styles, looking at the VARK classification, which is your visual, your reading and writing, auditory, and then kinetic, which is movement learning. And what happened is that in that sample group, 43% of the participants actually identified themselves as kinetic learning. And that's really interesting to me because if they learn through kinetic, how can you really incorporate that through e-learning when you have a screen in front of you instead of actual humans? And you don't really have something in your hands and so forth. That is particularly my style, which at times I may have actually struggled in some of the subjects because I needed to be more hands-on with it. So that's a really interesting little fact that I did learn from that study. So these are some of the things, being a critic of learning styles, I was able to learn and understand how these can actually impact several of the training programs. So what is missing? The biggest part of what was missing in my eyes was the observational and social learning. This has become a large part of my dissertation actually when I started to look at it from a different perspective, particularly with the leadership development. And a quote in one of the studies that I did find was that observational learning has a part to play in leadership development, but its significance is rather underexplored and is certainly significantly under-theorized. And that's really interesting because we have so many of these leadership developments. It's not really explored, nor is it really theorized, the observational learning aspect of it. And the reason why this is, to me, very important is that employees often follow the crowd because they have low confidence due to them being new, perhaps. And by observing their peers, they gather information and increase their confidence. Does that translate into e-learning? It's actually quite difficult. And there again, it's rather kind of unexplored and under-theorized. And in 2001, 76 of the training was being delivered in face-to-face classrooms, and only 11% was basically technology-based. But yet only 6 years later, in-person training declined 61%, and technology-based increased to 33%. And so since 11 years have gone by since that, obviously the technology has skyrocketed since then, and in-person training probably has declined a little bit more. And so my question remains, how does technology-based online learning affect observational learning? And that's a real genuine question that when I have posed this to a couple of leaders in different organizations, they kind of give me a strange look because they had never thought about that before. And it does play a large role into it. And that's what I'm hoping my dissertation will begin to kind of unravel and hopefully kind of open eyes up. So what is wrong with many of these systems? Both in leadership development and IDL, there was a constant theory of the proper evaluation is what is completely missing from a lot of these programs. Organizations must be aware that they're not simply looking into what is trendy, and they should be looking at something their employees will actually learn from, because in the end, they need to ensure the organization's investment has a genuine and measurable return on investment. There's no point in putting hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars into programs that may not be actually effective. So you have to have a proper evaluation that is well balanced to test their effectiveness. Now, what they need to consider as an as an effective system, that it's more than simple satisfactory surveys, that actually studies the effects and the outcomes of their programs. And this is where there's been a lot of confusion, is that, oh, well, we send out a survey, but really the organization are sending out a survey whether their employees like the system. Do they think that it's working? They're just getting their opinions and their satisfaction with it, rather than actually studying the effects of the system and the actual outcomes to protect that return on investment. So in evaluating all of the research that I have done, some of the key points are going to be that organizations must stay vigilant, that not everything can be taught online, that social learning is relevant and it should remain part of the training programs. Even though we don't have quite as much of the research to back that up, there is actual evidence that it should remain part of that. E-learning is cost effective in the short term, but what we're beginning to see is that it's not exactly paying off in the long term. Businesses are actually seeing an increase in unethical behavior, and more employees feel that they are in a leadership crisis, which is really concerning. And it really is concerning when it comes to return on investment. If you have unethical behavior from an employee, you're going to have to pay for that, which then you're going to end up paying even more money. So that's quite concerning. And if employees feel that they're in a leadership crisis, I have to wonder, what is the effect on their engagement? Do they feel more inclined to leave because of the behavior and what they feel is a leadership crisis? And there's little research on the effects of the decrease in observational and social learning. So that is something I think we need to kind of keep an eye on as well, because I do think it is important to add in. And I kind of believe that the social learning is affecting a lot of the unethical behavior that we're seeing. So with that in mind, my recommendation is that organizations need to redesign their program. They need to utilize online learning, but they need to incorporate some in-person training to satisfy more of that observational and social learning, and design an evaluation process. This is more than simple satisfaction surveys. It's there to protect their investment and evaluate for effectiveness, so that they can change and adjust things to get the outcome that they're obviously looking for. And the bottom line to all of this is, why invest in training programs if there's no measurable and effective evaluation to see if it works? Are they seeing an increase in their leadership? Are they seeing a decrease in some of the unethical behaviors? Are their employees actually happier, more satisfied, excuse me, and feeling more engaged? That's where the investment is. So if you're investing in a program and you're not getting that back out of it, what is the point? And you have to be able to measure that to see if it works. So the reason for that recommendation is the organization, if they did follow the recommendation, obviously there would be stronger connection to the material. There'd be clarification in the organizational goals, clarification in their position, and even the hierarchy. There's going to be stronger leaders that may influence positive behaviors and promote change. It's going to protect their investment, and it's going to increase their return on investment. And the reason for the recommendation is, if organizations choose not to do so, obviously it's going to be kind of opposite what I just discussed. There's going to be less clarification of goals and position. There's going to be possible decrease in employee engagement, increase in employee turnover, and a loss in investment. And that is based on my presentation. So I hope I gave you some new insight and some new ideas, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation overall. Thank you.